He was the only man in the city who saw some of the world's most dangerous faces before they got their new names. The mistake that almost got him killed wasn't a deal with spies. It wasn't a secret meeting in an alley. It was a reprint. One extra sheet of tiny faces. One copy he wasn't supposed to make. That was all it took to crack open a Cold War passport factory hiding in plain sight. He wasn't a spy. He didn't carry a gun. He didn't cross borders with false papers. He didn't know any secret codes. He stood in the red, half-dark, breathing chemicals and dust, feeding strangers' lives through a machine. He was a photo lab worker, 40 years old, never married. A small one-room flat above a bakery that always smelled like yesterday's bread and old fixer. If you lived in that neutral European capital in the last years of the Cold War, there was a good chance he'd seen your face. Not in person, on film, birthdays, weddings, baptisms, funerals, passport photos where people tried to look serious and ended up looking scared. He saw it all, and he never said a word. That was the rule. From the street, the lab looked harmless. Narrow storefront. Neon sign, photos, 1-hour passport, visa, ID out front, bright light, cheap frames, sample portraits of smiling babies and happy couples. Out back, another world. Red safety lights, deep shadows. The steady hum of enlargers and processing machines. The smell was sharp and chemical. Developer, stop bath, fixer, drying paper, coffee gone cold. This was his territory. He knew the machines better than he knew most people. By the sound of the rollers, he could tell when a pump was getting tired. By the feel of the paper, when the chemicals were a degree too cold. He didn't have hobbies, he had process. Load the film, check the temperature, count the seconds, watch ghosts turn into faces. It was a small, quiet magic. And like any magic, it depended on rules. One of them was simple. You never keep copies of anything the client didn't ask you to keep. Tonight, he would break that rule. The lab had a night drop, a metal slot in the door, like a mailbox, where people shoved their film after closing. In the morning, he emptied it. On busy days, it was full of envelopes. Summer '88, beach. Anna's birthday. Dog show? Sometimes more serious ones. Visa photos, urgent. Passport, do not smile. He treated them all the same. You didn't joke with bureaucracy. You made sure the heads were the right size, eyes the right distance from the edge, background the right gray. He had done passport photos for so many countries he could see their standards when he shut his eyes. That's why, the night it arrived, the envelope bothered him before he even opened it. It was waiting in the night drop when he came in for the late shift. Plain white. No logo, thicker than usual. On the front, a single line of typed text, rush, contact sheet only, do not cut, do not print individual frames. No name, no phone number, no trip to Italy or for grandma, just that. On the back, taped neatly, an envelope with cash. Too much for a simple contact sheet. Too little for a full portrait session. A test. Whoever dropped this off knew exactly what they wanted, and what they didn't want. No single prints, no cropping, no easy-to-share portraits. Just one page, a single contact sheet with all the frames in miniature. He'd processed film for police before. Accident scenes, crime scenes. Those always came with stamps, signatures, case numbers. This had none of that. Still, work was work. He slid the film canister out of the envelope. Black 35mm cassette. No brand sticker. Just a strip of white tape with a handwritten code, R17. Under the red light in the back room, he cracked the cassette and fed the film onto a stainless steel reel. It moved smoothly between his fingers. No scratches, no torn sprocket holes. Whoever shot this was not a tourist. Into the tanks. 7 minutes in developer. 30 seconds in stop bath, 5 minutes in fixer, wash, hang. Long, dripping ribbons of negatives. From this distance, they were just blocks of light and dark. He couldn't see faces yet. He cut the film into strips and took them to the enlarger. Making a contact sheet was routine. Lay the strips on top of the photographic paper. Cover with a glass plate. Expose once. All the frames appear at once, small and equal, like stamps. He set the timer. The enlarger lamp flashed. He slipped the paper into the developer tray and rocked it gently. The ghosts began to appear. He leaned closer, expecting beach scenes, children, maybe a badly lit party. What surfaced out of the gray made his skin crawl. The entire sheet was faces. Not one or two, dozens, no parties, no landmarks, no fun, just head and shoulders shots on plain backgrounds, passport style. He'd seen full rolls where a nervous person did 12 tries for a single ID photo. This was different. These weren't 12 tries of one person. These were many people, shot with the same cold precision, same distance, same light, same framing. At first, his brain tried to file it away. Maybe an office, maybe a company ID project. But the longer he looked, the stranger it became. The faces repeated. A man in the top row appeared again in the fourth row. Same eyes, same nose, different hair, different glasses. A woman in the middle row appeared 3 times. Hair loose, hair tied back, different parting, different age in each. Older with light and makeup, younger with softer shadows. The sheet wasn't a collection of random people. It was the same small group, over and over, in different versions of themselves. Different hair, different accessories, different tiny adjustments, as if someone was testing how many lives one face could wear, as if they were building options, not memories, identities. He lifted the wet sheet closer to the red light, his breath loud in the small room. Halfway down, one frame broke the pattern. No face. A table. On the table, something open. A passport. He leaned in until the letters blurred. He'd seen thousands of passports across his counter. He recognized the crest on the cover. A major Western country. He recognized the layout of the inner page. But what froze him wasn't the design. It was the mismatch. The name printed under the photo was one he knew from the evening news. A mid-level official. Always just behind the important men. Holding folders. Whispering into ears. Real man, real profile. The face above that name was someone else. One of the faces from the sheet. His stomach turned. He set the paper down because his hands felt suddenly unsteady. He traced the rows again, this time as a technician, not as a tired man on a late shift. Blank backgrounds in exactly the shades used for official documents. Exact head size, eye level, margins, the standards pinned to his own wall. Multiple versions of the same people, aged up and down with light, hair, glasses. At the bottom, 2 frames with blank passport pages, no names, no photos yet. Waiting to be filled. It wasn't an art project. It wasn't a school experiment. It was a catalog. A menu of faces and documents. His lab was part of a production line for new lives. He tried to argue with himself. Maybe it was for a film, maybe a theater company, maybe the official on TV had a twin brother. The excuses sounded stupid even in his own head. He'd been doing this too long. He knew what bureaucratic photos looked like. He knew how real people behaved when they needed real documents. They came in with messy hair and bad moods, arguing about whether they could smile. They did not send anonymous envelopes full of cash and coded instructions. They did not ask for only a contact sheet and no individual prints. And they definitely didn't take test photos of someone else wearing their name. He looked at the cash again. This wasn't someone hiding an affair. This wasn't someone embarrassed about a party. This was a pipeline, and tonight it had run straight through his hands. He knew what he was supposed to do. Follow the instructions. Print one contact sheet. Don't cut. Don't make extras. Seal it. Put R17 ready on the shelf. Forget it. That was the unspoken rule of his trade. People brought you things you didn't want to know. You made sure the focus was sharp. The exposure was right. You did not ask why someone needed 50 near-perfect photos of the same woman in different wigs. You minded your own business. You went home, you slept. But his eyes kept returning to that frame with the passport and the wrong face. He had watched that name talk about security and trust on TV. Now he'd seen someone else wearing it like a mask. Something small and stubborn moved under his ribs. Not heroism, just anger. Someone had pulled his quiet chemical world into a lie that walked on red carpets, and they'd assumed he would never notice. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the machine's hum, the clock tick, the rain outside. Then he broke his own rule. He loaded a fresh sheet of paper, laid the same negatives on top, hit the timer again, a second contact sheet. His hand shook a little as he rocked the tray. Faces emerged again, same rows, same ghosts. This time, they weren't just a client's property, they were evidence. He hung both sheets to dry. When they were ready, he took the second one, the copy no one had asked for, and slid it into a plain folder. The folder went into the bottom drawer of his workstation, under a stack of old manuals. He pushed the drawer shut until it clicked. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. On paper, he had just committed the worst professional sin in his line of work, making an unauthorized copy. Tonight, it was the safest move he had. The official sheet went into the original envelope. He sealed it, wrote, in neat block letters, "Ready, R17, paid," and placed it on the pickup shelf behind the front counter. The lab was closed. The city outside was wet and empty. Just after midnight. The neon sign buzzed in the window. In the back, the radio murmured low about football scores and rising tensions that everyone pretended not to hear anymore. He finished the rest of the batch. Weddings, a school play, a family on a beach, all four of them sunburned and pretending they weren't. Normal people, normal lives. He almost managed to convince himself that R17 was just a weird job he'd think about and then forget. Then someone opened the back door. No one used the back door at night. Staff came through the front. Deliveries arrived in the morning. The sound was small, the click of a key, the soft sigh of a seal breaking. He slapped the radio off. The silence hit him like a wall. Footsteps in the corridor, slow, steady, not the uneven shuffle of a drunk. Someone who knew exactly where they were going. He wiped his hands on his apron without realizing it. His eyes flicked toward the bottom drawer where the second sheet lay hidden. The drawer looked ordinary. Only he knew it wasn't. He stepped out toward the corridor. A man walked into the red light. Average height, average coat, average face. The kind of man you'd never remember 2 minutes after passing him on the street. He closed the door behind him carefully, without a sound. His eyes adjusted to the dark in seconds. He didn't look around like a new customer. His gaze went straight past the machines, past the drying negatives, and landed on the pickup shelf. He didn't scan the labels. He didn't hesitate. He reached out and took exactly the right envelope. R17, like a man who'd done this more than once. "Evening," he said. His voice was flat, polite, colorless, as if they were doing something as boring as buying bread. "I was told my order would be ready." No name, no receipt, no questions. He didn't check the photos. He didn't count the money. He already knew what was inside. The lab worker swallowed. "Yes," he said, "R17, all done." His voice sounded almost normal. He hated that. The man slid the envelope into his coat. He took a slow look around the lab, not curious, not impressed, just verifying. "The people who recommended this place," he said quietly, "said it was reliable, discreet." It didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a warning. Then he turned and walked back down the corridor, footsteps swallowed by the rain and the hum of the machines. The back door closed with a soft, final click. The red light buzzed. The lab worker stood alone again, hands damp, heart beating too fast. He knew, with a cold, perfect clarity, two things. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just a customer. And that plain envelope he had just carried into the dark didn't hold vacation memories. It held a menu of faces for people who needed to become someone else. The only proof he hadn't imagined any of it was a damp contact sheet hidden in the bottom drawer, waiting to decide what kind of man he was going to be when the sun came up. He didn't sleep. He went home, locked the door, and sat at his small kitchen table with the light off, breathing bakery smell through the floor and staring at nothing. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the contact sheet, row after row of faces, the wrong face above the familiar name, the man with the average coat, average voice, average threat, sliding the envelope into his pocket. He turned the radio on, then off. He picked up the phone, then put it down. Who do you even call to say, "I think my photo lab is feeding a passport factory"? The police? They handled drunks, fights, burglaries. They'd either laugh or write a report that would disappear into a drawer until the wrong person read it. He thought of calling no one. Let it go. Let it move on. Let someone else notice next time. Then he pictured that passport again, the borrowed name, the borrowed identity walking through airports and embassies, doing whatever people like that did. It wasn't guilt that decided it for him. It was something simpler, smaller, and much harder to live with. If he pretended he hadn't seen it, then whoever came next to use his machines would be right about him. That he was just a pair of hands. That he would never look too closely. He didn't like that idea, not at all. He didn't know anyone in intelligence. He did know one customer who always brought in film from crime scenes. Middle-aged, neat suit, police crest on his ID. The man always labeled his envelopes with case numbers and the word evidence in big block letters. He paid on time. He spoke politely. He never asked for a discount. More importantly, he never flirted, joked, or tried to be charming. He treated the lab worker as what he was, someone who saw too much and said nothing. The next morning, the lab opened at 9. At 10, the detective walked in with 2 rolls from a burglary. "Same process," he said, putting the film on the counter. "Standard prints and 1 contact sheet." His voice was as flat as always. The lab worker rang up the order. His heart hammered against his ribs. He slid the receipt across. Then, before he could think better of it, he said, "There's something else I'd like to show you, in the back, off the record." The detective's eyes flicked up. They were gray and tired, the eyes of a man who'd seen more than enough. "Off the record is a phrase that makes paperwork," he said. "Is it about my cases?" "It's about someone else's," the lab worker said quietly, "and about my job." He held the gaze. The detective studied him for a second, then nodded once. "2 minutes," he said, "before my coffee gets cold." In the back room, under the red glow, the lab worker opened the bottom drawer. His hands shook a little. He hated that. He took out the plain folder, laid it on the counter, and opened it. The contact sheet stared up at them. Dozens of faces. The passport frame, the blank pages. The detective didn't gasp. He didn't ask stupid questions. He stepped closer, bent down, and looked like a man checking a crime scene, not a piece of paper. "How long have you had this?" he asked. "Since last night," the lab worker said. "Client ordered a single contact sheet. No cuts, no individual prints. Cash only, no name. Came through the night drop." He told the rest fast and clean. The envelope, the instructions, the faces repeating, the wrong man under the right name, the late-night pickup through the back door. He left nothing out. When he finished, the detective was still looking at the sheet. His jaw had tightened. "I've seen 2 of these faces before," he said quietly. "Not in your shop, in case files, in photographs that turned out to be inconvenient." He straightened. "What you've done," he said, "is illegal." The lab worker's stomach dropped. "Making a second copy of a client's film without consent is a violation of privacy law," the detective went on. "Normally, I'd have to write you up, and you'd answer annoying questions for weeks." He closed the folder. "But this time," he said, "I'm going to pretend you showed me nothing, and decide that someone else needs to see it instead." "Who?" the lab worker managed. "The people whose job it is," the detective said, "to worry about faces that show up in the wrong passports. They didn't come to the shop. They made him come to them." 4 days later, just after closing, the phone rang. The voice on the other end was polite and anonymous. "Photo lab on Linden Street?" "Yes." "We'd like you to bring a particular contact sheet to an appointment tomorrow morning. An officer will meet you at the side entrance of the main police building. Ask for room 312. "Who is we?" he asked. There was a brief pause. "We are the part of this country," the voice said, "that gets very nervous when foreign passports start behaving strangely. Please be on time." The line clicked. Room 312 was not where you went to argue about parking tickets. Plain walls, plain table, tape recorder. 2 men and 1 woman sat across from him. No uniforms. Dark, serious clothes. They introduced themselves with first names that might have been real or might have been assigned an hour ago. "We work for the Internal Security Service," the woman said, placing a small card on the table and sliding it just far enough for him to see the crest. "We handle counter-espionage. We've been told you brought us something interesting?" His throat felt dry. He laid the folder on the table and opened it. The contact sheet seemed even more crowded under the harsh office light. Faces. So many faces. The 3 of them leaned in without a word. He watched their eyes move over the rows. The woman's hand stopped on the frame with the passport. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Here," she said. The man to her left let out a slow breath. "Of course," he said. "You recognize the name?" the lab worker asked. All 3 looked at him at once. "Do you?" the woman said. "Yes," he answered. "Everyone does. He's on television twice a week." The woman closed the folder, as if shutting a door. "All right," she said, "let's talk." The questioning was long but not cruel. They wanted details, not theory. Times, dates, exact wording, amounts of money. They asked him to walk them, step by step, through every second of the job. Who else had been in the building? Which light was on? Whether he'd seen the client's car through the back window. He answered as best he could. They didn't yell. They didn't threaten. They had the quiet efficiency of people who had no time to waste. When he finished, the woman folded her hands. "Here is what we think," she said. "This contact sheet is not the beginning of something. It is the middle of something that has been running for a long time." She tapped the folder. "These faces, in different versions. This is not just forgery, it's engineering. Someone is designing identities that pass every border check, every consulate window." The man on her left added, We've seen a pattern for years now. People showing up in other countries with perfect documents that fall apart only when you push very, very hard. Wrong little details. A town that doesn't match an accent. A school that never had that student. But the photos were always flawless, the third man said. Always just within the rules. Right measurements, right backgrounds, impossible to trace, until now. They looked at him. At you. He shifted in his chair. I just run the machines, he said weakly. And that, the woman said, is exactly why they trusted you. You are supposed to be invisible. You're not supposed to notice patterns. She paused. Tonight you ruined someone's idea of invisible. He swallowed. So, what happens now? He asked. Now, the first man said, we do something we don't like doing. We let the pipeline keep running, for a while. The woman opened another folder. Inside were photographs, photocopies of passports, blurred faces, entry stamps. On some he recognized people from the contact sheet, aged up or down. Your lab is not the whole factory, she said. It is just one station on the line. We suspect there's a separate place where they print the documents, another where they steal or buy real blanks, another where they build the legend. Jobs, addresses, histories. She slid one photo toward him. A man's passport. Ordinary name. 3 years ago, she said, this man entered our country on this passport, stayed 2 weeks and left. Since then, he has been seen in 3 other countries, with 3 other passports, all perfect, all with different names, all with the same face, adjusted slightly each time. He felt his skin go cold. He looked at the face. He could imagine it on the contact sheet with different hair, different glasses. Somewhere, the man on the left said, there is a workshop that treats identities the way your lab treats photos. He looked at the lab worker. And thanks to you, we now have a chance of finding it. They didn't ask him to become a spy. They asked him to stay himself. You will continue to work, the woman said. You will not change anything in your routine. When another envelope like R17 arrives, and we are almost certain it will, you will process it exactly as you did before. She slid a small, heavy object across the table, a camera. Not the kind he used, smaller, metal. Before you seal the envelope, she said, you will take a photograph of the contact sheet, front and back. You will not keep extra copies anymore. You will not hide them in drawers. Too risky? He asked. Too obvious, she said. If they ever search that lab, we would rather they find nothing than find you trying to be clever. She put a slip of paper on the table. A phone number. Every time you receive such a roll, she said, you will call this number from a public phone box. You will say only your first name and the code written on the film canister. Then you will hang up. And if I don't? He asked. She held his gaze. Then we will assume someone has asked you different questions, she said, and we will act as if you are no longer on our side. There was no need to explain what act meant. He understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. The next envelope came 2 weeks later. Same night drop, same plain paper, same typewritten demands. Contact sheet only. Do not cut. Do not print individual frames. Different code on the tape. R21. His hands shook less this time as he loaded the film. He'd already made the call from the phone box down the street, pretending to buy cigarettes he didn't smoke. He did the work. Same backgrounds, same clinical lighting. Different faces. But now, as they appeared in the tray, he saw the pattern with new eyes. He saw how certain features repeated, how one new face was just a small recalculation of an older one. The machine in the shadows was busy. He took the secret photographs of the contact sheet with the small camera, as instructed. When they dried, he sealed the official sheet in its envelope, labeled it, and put it on the shelf. That night, a different average man came to the back door to collect it. Different coat, same careful walk. The lab worker handed it over. "Reliable," the man said. "Discreet." The words felt like fingerprints in his ears now. The operation stretched over months. He was only told slivers. They didn't invite him into the strategy rooms. He was a sensor on the edge of their net. He heard things in fragments when they hauled him in for debriefings. A courier followed from the lab to a quiet side street, then onto a second address. A white van that showed up every time a certain code appeared, always parking within sight of the same apartment building. A printer who suddenly retired and moved abroad with no clear source of money. They flipped one person in the chain. A man who had been paid to smuggle out blank passport booklets from a ministry printing house. They followed another through airports in 3 countries, watching where he felt safe enough to sit down and make calls. Piece by piece, the larger machine emerged, his little lab providing faces, a forged design studio concocting backstories and fake companies, a corrupt official stamping real visas into unreal lives, and at the center a quiet workshop in a rented warehouse, where real stolen blanks and real perfect photos became new identities. He never saw that place. He saw its reflection in their eyes when they came back from raids. The takedown, when it came, did not make front-page news. Too many embassies would have had uncomfortable questions. Instead, it came as a series of small, unrelated stories. A respected businessman under investigation for financial irregularities. A low-ranking civil servant quietly dismissed for procedural violations. A foreign consultant asked to leave the country for administrative reasons. He heard more, unofficially. The detective from the crime scenes came in one afternoon, dropped off some burglary film and said, "Busy month for travel agencies," with a look that said everything else. Later, in room 312, the woman from the service summed it up without triumph. "We shut down this workshop," she said. "We arrested some of the people who ran it. We traded others away in quiet agreements your newspaper will never mention." She closed a file. "Have we stopped the entire system?" she asked. "No, they will build others, somewhere else, with other tools." She nodded toward him. "But we tore out a major piece," she said, "because you decided one extra sheet of paper was worth the trouble." He didn't know what to say to that. He settled for, "I just didn't like that they were using my lab." She smiled, very faintly. "Sometimes," she said, "that's enough." He didn't get a medal. He got a new owner. A year later, the lab was sold to a big chain. New logo, new machines, new policies. The new manager told him they were modernizing the brand. They wanted younger staff at the counter, people who could connect with customers. He was offered a payout and a reference. In the letter, his dismissal was explained as business restructuring. Nothing about the fact that his machines had once been part of a war over names and borders. He took the money. He found work at a quieter place, a small shop that mostly did family portraits and school photos, the kind with cartoon backdrops and pre-booked time slots. No night drop, no anonymous envelopes. Sometimes he missed the red light and the smell of chemicals. Mostly, he didn't. Years later, the story leaked in pieces. A retired official wrote a careful memoir. A foreign magazine ran an article with too many anonymous sources. During the late Cold War, one paragraph said, a neutral capital was used as a hub for the production of high-quality forged passports linked to several intelligence services. The operation was eventually disrupted after a Photolab employee noticed irregular patterns in ID photo orders and alerted authorities. No name, just that job title. He read that sentence in a cafe over bitter coffee. At another table, a student laughed. As if, the student said. Some guy in a darkroom could bring down a spy ring. Sounds like a movie. He almost smiled. Almost. He didn't argue. He finished his coffee, paid, and walked out. Down the street, a tourist stopped in front of a new photo shop and asked in halting words about passport pictures. The clerk smiled, led them to a stool, adjusted the lights. Neutral background, head straight. No smile. It looked innocent. It usually was. But as he walked past, hands in his pockets, he couldn't help thinking about contact sheets. About faces tried on like clothes. About names that didn't match the faces wearing them. And about the small, stupid, stubborn moment when he had decided that one extra sheet of paper mattered. No report would ever put it that way. The official version would talk about interagency cooperation and successful disruption of an international network. On paper, his part in it would always be one anonymous phrase, Photo Lab employee. But he knew the truth the forms left out. Sometimes a whole architecture of forged lives, offshore accounts and deep cover agents, trips not over a genius or a gunfight, but over one tired man in a red-lit room who refuses to pretend that the wrong face under the right name is none of his business.